All right, want to welcome everyone to this third session. We're going to have, I think, an interesting session here. And the topic's going to be, we're going to speak about Gentile identities, in the Torah. And we're going to show, well beyond the shadow of a doubt, what the term Bnei Noach means. It's not actually a Christian term. People make that mistake. Some people think there's no such thing as Noahide. You can't say the word Noahide. It's kind of like, we'll keep this clean, kind of like a four-letter word. God forbid we use the word Noahide, right? We're going to use the word Noahide. So let's speak about a Ger Tzedek, a righteous convert. We're going to speak about, the Umos HaOlam, Pious to receive a share in the world to come. And we're going to speak about a Ger Toshav, a non-Jewish side to the land of Israel. But what we're going to do, and I think we're going to have a little fun here, is that we're going to show what the terms are. We're going to define the terms, and we're going to make sure that the terms are 100% understood. We don't want them skewed. We don't want people to misquote them. We don't want people to say, that's a non-term. It doesn't exist. You're making it up. No. These are all legitimate terms. And we're going to take it step by step here. So first thing is that there are a lot of different meanings when we use technical verses. Right? In other words, we have certain contexts. We have words that may be similar, but they don't necessarily mean exactly the same thing. Right? What's one example? One example, you take the words accurate and precise. People use it in everyday language. I don't even think they're necessarily, SAT words. They could be. Right? They're used in everyday speech, but they have very different meanings. They have very different meanings if we look at them, in a different context. Let's say a scientific context. Now, most people hear the word challah, right? The word challah can mean, loaves of bread you eat on Shabbos, right? Those braided loaves used on the Sabbath. But the Talmud, other works to term religious practice, challah, what does that refer to? It refers to the dough of the tithe that's given to Kohanim. Give to the priest in the time of the temple. Right? If you look at Numbers chapter 15, verses 17 to 21. So today, if a Jew is cooking enough dough, let's say they're making, a number of challahs, for Shabbos. So we also take challah today. But we can't give it to a Kohen. Right? We don't have a temple today. So we don't give it a Kohen. So what do? We can't get benefit from it. You burn it. Right? You wrap it up in aluminum foil, stick it in the oven, and you burn it. But again, you have two words seemingly say the same thing, very different meaning. So the Torah also uses many terms for non-Jews. It's not made up. It's totally not made up. There are a lot of names for non-Jews in the context of Jewish law. And they have very specific meaning. Now, we're going to go through them. I just want to reiterate that we don't want Webster's seventh definition. Right? We're not interested in seventh definition. We want to understand what the words mean, what the context means specifically. Now we're going to make this up. Now we're going to say a Kabbalistic humbo jumbo over here. We're going to say exactly what the words mean and what they represent. Right? The use of terms in Kabbalistic and mystical, midrashic, other non-legal writings, a little less control. Right? But again, see, this is crucial. And Ray, you're going to understand this probably a lot more than most people. And that is, it takes a trained, experienced, rabbinic scholar. Let's repeat that. A trained, experienced, rabbinic scholar to determine when these legal and practical meanings are used and when they're metaphoric connotations. There's nothing I don't like more or I hate more, and that is people make statements and they quote things, and guess what? They don't know what they're quoting. You know, some people will say, hey, the word ger, every time in the Torah means ger Toshav. Really? Doesn't it mean convert? Well, if it means a Jew, why does it say convert? Very good. So I always say you have to look at things in context. You know, non-Jews, Messianics, they're very good at taking, you know, verses out of context. They're very good at taking, you know, things we may say, God forbids, you know, against non-Jews and other things in oral law, way out of context. Right? We mentioned that last week, I think, or the week before. It's called cherry picking. So if you're going to look at it in context, you may not like the context. That's okay. Right? But you have to understand what the context is. Before you start jumping up and down, this is discriminatory. Right? We mentioned an example. You know, the Talmud says on Shabbos, a Jew's not allowed to save a non-Jew. So people jump up and down. What? We're second-class citizens. You let us drown. You know, you just let us drown. So if you look at that piece of Talmud, there's a whole discussion in the Talmud says, how am I allowed to save a Jew on Shabbos? Right? So the basic answer is you can only save them, technically, if you know they're going to keep Shabbos. You don't know they're going to keep Shabbos, or they don't keep Shabbos. Right? Maybe you're not allowed to save them. So the whole discussion. And then the Talmud throws you in a gift. What's the gift? By the way, you're not allowed to save a non-Jew. You're not allowed to save a non-Jew on Shabbos. Well, if 50 lines on this page talk about how you're allowed to save a non-Jew, and a quarter of a line says you're not allowed to, so how you allowed to save a Jew or not save a Jew, and then there's a quarter of a line, or even, I'll be nice, a line and a half that says you're not allowed to save a non-Jew, don't you think not saving a non-Jew is not the essence of what's going on? It's not the essence of what's going on. You got 50 lines versus a line and a half. So people say, see, you're not allowed to save a non-Jew on Shabbos. That's not the crux of the issue. The crux of the issue is how am I allowed to save a Jew? That's the crux of the issue. So they're good at cherry picking. And that's why I reiterate the fact that it takes a trained rabbinic scholar to know when these things are used and how they're used. In my language, if you are a fly in the pan and you think, oh, I learned a little bit of Talmud, I know how to read a little bit of Hebrew, so I know these things, do me a favor. Go back and learn. Don't tell me what it means if you don't know what it means. Don't tell me, you know, if you haven't gone through a lot of Torah that you're going to explain to me Kabbalah. I don't think it works that way. You cannot explain calculus to somebody if you've never studied algebra or trig. There's no possible way. You can't run if you don't know how to crawl. Right? You're not going to explain, oh, Gare says this. This is what it means. Yeah, of course that's what it means. You think? You got a brain in your head over here? I don't think so. Because you're quoting things totally out of context. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this right. We're not a fly in the pan over here. We want to make sure people get the right information instead of getting messed up information. So the Torah, Jewish law are by necessity. What's important over here? Defining idolatry, the identity of the idolater. Right? Many times the Torah says you're not allowed to worship idols. Right? You're not allowed to make graven images. Now, there's a whole question. Am I allowed to own them? Even if I don't worship them, can I keep them? What about a New Testament? Am I allowed to have it? Do I have to burn it? Right? But idolatry over here, there are a lot of different forms. It can be modes of worship, right? Bowing down, giving incense. It could be a system of belief. Now, idolatry, in the vernacular, we'll speak more in detail, can be anything that takes God out of the picture that you worship. So what would I call that in my language? What's today? Sunday. What are people worshiping today? Pigskin. Football. It's all about football, right? That's what Sunday is in the winter, right? We're not in the winter yet. Still not cold here in Israel. Some places in America it's cooler, but money. People worship money. People call that idolatry. Even better, food. Nothing greater than food. Last week's parsha, we spoke about, Esau getting his blessing stolen from him. So he says to Jacob, he says to Yaakov, he says, give me some of that red stuff because I'm dying over it. Yeah, you've been busy rummaging, pillaging, murdering, idolatry, immorality. Yeah, he's tired out. So he says, tell me your birthright. He goes, come on, what's my birthright? He says, sell it. He says, I want you to sell it. And he says, fine. He says, I'll sell it. Then what did he do? So the Medrash says, Yaakov stuffed it in his face, right? Like a vacuum cleaner. And I've seen, unfortunately, some people eat like they've never had a meal. It's like they just stuff it in. So food can be idolatry. I can tell you when I was growing up many years ago, so, I grew up, amongst adults. And these adults, a lot of them, when they're eating lunch, eating breakfast, eating lunch, they're already thinking about the next meal. I can't make this up. I heard it with my own ears. Saw it with my own eyes. That's idolatry. Now, you tell me it's a belief system. Eating and doing all that, that's not a belief system. It may not be a belief system, right? But people are making it into something that it's really not. We have to eat. What's the purpose of eating? The purpose of eating is satiating the body so I can learn Torah, so I can do mitzvahs, right? That is the purpose. That is the purpose over here. The Ramban, Nachmanides says in Leviticus chapter 19, he says, the verse over there says, there's an obligation to be holy. Why? Because God is holy. Rashi over there says, what does it mean? It means stay away from immorality. The Ramban over there says, what does it mean? It means that you're allowed to eat. Doesn't mean you're allowed to be a glutton. You're allowed to drink. Doesn't mean you're allowed to, be an alcoholic. So, yeah, you see people eat too much, maybe drink too much, So we're allowed to eat and drink, but you have to know how, right? Everything within reason. So even that can be a form of idolatry, right? But again, it's not something a non-Jew is necessarily going to be killed for. It's something specific, right? Idolatrous practice is bowing before statue. That's forbidden. Even if you don't believe what you're doing. Doesn't matter. You bow down, for instance, you had $100 bill in front of an idol. You bend down to pick it up. You say, I have no intention to bow down to this stupid thing. I'll kick it in the head. I'm going to kick it. I'm going to, field goal, right? I'm going to kick it in the head over here. So what happens? You're liable. Why are you liable? Because that's the way you serve it. Right? If that's the way you serve it, it's forbidden. So you're going to say, okay, I had $100 bill in front of an idol. How do I get my $100 bill back? So the only way to get it back is I turn around, I kneel down, I sit down, and I grab it backwards. Because that's not how you serve an idol. Totally not how you serve an idol. So idolatrous beliefs certainly is believing in gods, right? And manifest, or has manifested himself corporally are prohibited. To make God into a human, right? To make a statue of him, whatever he looks like, or she looks like. We're not gonna be biased over here. That's forbidden, right? Torah states clear. I'm not allowed to have idols, right? I'm not allowed to make it, in my image of God. Well, too bad. It's forbidden, right? An idolater now is referred to a variety of names. The idolater can be called an akum, right? Akum is an acronym for Oived Kochavim Umazalot. Somebody who serves stars and constellations, right? We'll speak about if that's really idolatry or not. Because today most people don't know how to do it. What about horoscope? Right? We'll speak about that. But it's also used to refer to an idolater. And usually a general term over here for non-Jew. Now, a lesser known term, so we call it Noachide. What does a Noachide mean? A Noachide also means a non-Jew. Right? It's a similar connotation. Right? It's easy to say a non-Jew is called an Akum. Right? Again, someone who serves the stars of constellation. Or you can call him a Noachide. Right? A non-Jew. Right? Constitutes pretty much the same thing. Now, another term that's going to come up is what we call a Ger Tzedek. Now, what is the definition of a Ger Tzedek? A Ger Tzedek is what we understand as a righteous convert. Now, the word Ger in general, and again, it's important to understand definition. Right? The word Ger has many meanings. What's the root of the word Ger? Means the word Gar means to live, to sojourn. But it's noun. What does it mean? A stranger, an outsider. Now, usually when the term Ger is used, again, you have to see it in context. But the majority of time, the word Ger is used in the Torah is a convert. That's what it refers to. You tell me a Ger is somebody who's a Jew, full-fledged Jew. So why should it be called a Ger? It should be called a Jew. Why be referred as converts? Good question. Right? Why should they only be referred as converts if after they already convert? Right? I dealt with that one of my recent Q&As. But Ger is also can be used with the word Toshav. Now the word Toshav means dweller. Right? It means over here Ger Toshav, someone, something entirely different. Right? Which we're going to see. Right? We're going to see over here. Now, the Talmud itself, which we're going to see as we extrapolate a number of the verses, where we get the Noahide laws from, where they're derived from, goes to great detail, determining correct interpretation for the Torah's use of the term Ger. Now, the reason we need oral law in general is because the Torah does not give me definitions. Right? For example, the Torah tells me in the book of Leviticus, chapter 24, tells me about the holiday of Sukkot. It says you have to sit in a sukkah, a booth, for 7 days. Well, what's the definition of a sukkah? Does it have a roof? How many walls? Doesn't tell me any different definition. Also tells me I have to take palm fronds. I have to take a nice smelling fruit. No one's going to think it's a lemon on steroids. Right? No one's going to think it's an esrog. And I have to take willows and myrtle leaves. And I take it before God. No definition. Most of the Torah does not have definition. Hence, we need oral law. We have no other choice. Right? The Torah doesn't give me definitions over here. Right? So the Talmud devotes extensive analysis, understanding what this word means, what the word Ger means. So therefore, it qualifies its own use of Ger with the term Tzedek. Right? Tzedek means righteous. So therefore, when the Talmud wants to refer to a righteous convert, it doesn't just use the word Ger. It'll say Ger Tzedek. Right? And even if it doesn't, most likely it's talking about a righteous convert, unless it uses the word Ger Toshav. Right? That's the general context. So the term Ger Tzedek, which is used in the Talmud, Code of Jewish Law, 100% of the time made the full convert to Judaism. Right? And it's used in a number of places in the Talmud, etc. Now, the question is, as we alluded to before, if a Ger Tzedek is a full convert to Judaism, why does the Talmud call him a Jew? Why is it called a Ger Tzedek? Why is it called a righteous convert? Is that discrimination? Sounds like discrimination. He's a full-fledged Jew. Why do you remind him he's a convert? And the reason is that a convert is not 100% identical to a born Jew. Oh, we're going to get in trouble for this. Why is it not 100% identical to a born Jew? One example, female converts may not marry a Kohen or descendants of Aaron. Right? Not allowed to marry a Kohen. Kohen's got a pedigree. He's got a definite pedigree. Can't mess up the pedigree. You're going to say, what? I'm second class? No. Every non-Jew knows they were born as a non-Jew. They're their soul was on Mount Sinai, got messed up, however that worked, became a non-Jewish soul. So now either they have to convert, right, or they can stay in Noach, right? But there are certain people that a Kohen cannot marry. So by all definition, this convert is blemished. Not their fault. Their parents weren't Jewish. Their mother wasn't Jewish. So how can a Kohen who's got a pedigree? He's got a pedigree. Because God said he's got a pedigree. How can you marry a convert? Right? There's also an issue. Convert can't serve in a position of communal authority, such as being a synagogue rabbi or sit on a basement, right? A rabbinical court. Now, if there were 3 Jews and they accepted this convert as a judge, he could judge. He could judge converts as well, right? Can have a position of power. Why not? Why can't he have a position of power? Maybe he can't be the head of the yeshiva. Maybe he can't be, teaching in the yeshiva. What's the problem? Because where do we learn our power from? We learn our power from the verse that talks about a king. And when the verse talks about a king, who can the king be? He has to be someone mikerev achichu, from amongst your people. What does it mean amongst your people? So amongst your people means they have to be born a full-fledged Jew. So therefore, convert can't be king, can't be a Jewish king. It's a technicality. What's the technicality based on? It's based on the verse. Because they're not part of the Jewish people. They enter the covenant, very good. But really, they're not from amongst your people. They're outside. That makes sense. They were born a non-Jew. It's not their fault. We're not going to get into why people born non-Jews. Why wasn't I born a Jew? So I don't think we're not in control of, right? Most things. We're not in control of who our parents are. We're not in control of who our siblings are. We're not in control of socioeconomic situations. Million things we're not in control of. We could ask that question. I'm not saying it's not a legitimate question. Legitimate question. So over here, what's the issue? So why can't they sit on a beis din? Why cannot they sit on a rabbinic court over here? Or have a position of power, per se, because of that verse. You earn it out from a king. Since the king has to be part of your people, a convert's really not part of your people, even if they convert. And a king represents power. So if a king represents power, converts seemingly cannot have that position. Now, there are a little bit of ways around it, right? If the people who are coming in front of this beis din, in front of this rabbinical court, they agree to have this convert, judge them, okay, right? Even if they're Jewish, fine. They can certainly judge on the convert. But, there are issues, right? There are issues over here. So instead of saying, well, aren't they a full-fledged Jew? You see that they're not. You see that there's an issue. There are a few issues, right? We didn't mention by a mamzer. A mamzer is a child that comes from a forbidden union, right? Yeah, it's not just out of wedlock. It's a forbidden union. Now, who can that convert marry? Either someone of the same union, right? Sorry, who can that mamzer marry? Either someone of the same union or a convert. What are we, second-class citizens? No, there's a reality. This mamzer, has a blemish on his soul. So now a convert can tell me, once they convert, they're like a newborn baby. So everything they did before gets erased. So that may all be true. But at the same time, their soul's also blemished to a certain extent. They can't marry a Kohen. Can't have can't be a synagogue rabbi, sit on a beis din. So their soul's also a little bit blemished. It's not their fault. There's a technicality over here. So based on that, a mamzer can only marry someone of the same union or a convert. So for the purpose of discussing the laws involved, comes along the Talmud. Talmud says, I need to understand. I need to distinguish between a convert and a Jew, and a born Jew. Because there are differences. There are differences. Now, is there any other term for convert? In Hebrew, in the Torah, and anywhere else? No. The term is ger tzedek. There's a reason, right, which we understand. Now, There have been a lot of articles, wanting to expand the definition of ger. This is a big problem, right? This is a major problem. The authors don't have any merit. They're a bunch of frauds, as I mentioned last week. And they go beyond mainstream Torah thought. And they're contradicted by many things over the last 2,000 years. Not to mention, they don't have any credibility. No rabbis back them, right? So they want to have a totally new definition. Now, the Torah is only using two, right? Ger and ger Toshav. Right? We're going to see what a ger Toshav is. Right? But when the Talmud in Midrashim used the term ger Tzedek, it's talking about a convert. And usually, even if it didn't use that term, let's say use the term ger. There's no Toshav at the end of the word ger. There's no Tzedek. So what would I assume it means? It means a convert. Doesn't mean anything else. Doesn't mean a super Noahide. No proof. That's not what it means. 99% of the connotation means a convert. Even if I don't say ger Tzedek. But in order to get out of the problem, that someone's going to think it means something else, what does the rabbi say? Ger Tzedek. Right? It says ger Tzedek. It doesn't say Jew. There's good reason. There are differences. Now, there's a term also, a ben Noach, a bat Noach, and Bnei Noach. A ben Noach, a bat Noach, what does that mean? Literally a son of Noah and a daughter of Noah. And Bnei Noach is the plural, right? The plural, the sons of, the daughters of, right? The children of Noah. So the term used for a ben or a bat, Noach, right? A ben Noach or a bat Noach, what do we call that? A Noahide. It's a generic term for any non-Jew who keeps the 7 mitzvahs. For any reason or motivation. There are different types. There may Umos HaOlam, Umos HaOlam, right? For the wise ones of the nations, highest ones who receive a portion of the world to come. Now let's make one other thing very clear. Those that, I don't like the term Noahide. Well, you know what? Doesn't matter what a person likes or what they don't like. The Talmud in a number of places uses the terminology, not me, not my rabbi, not his rabbi, the rabbis of the Talmud 2,000 years ago. They use the terminology ben Noah. Not a Christian idea. Came before Christianity. Well before Christianity. Right? No such thing. These stupid ger people will say, no, those are ben Noah. You ever read the Talmud on the subject? There are a number of places in the Talmud that say ben Noah. What do you think? The Talmud was kidding? You think they just erased it? Get a grip. I don't think that's the case. Not at all. So why would the Talmud use that term? Come on, give me a good answer. You don't have a good answer. You have nothing. You're bluffers, right? You have nothing. So what do you say? Oh, it doesn't exist. What do you mean it doesn't exist? The Talmud uses that language. The rabbis, generations later, use that language. They use that language. It's all made up. It's wrong. Where do these people get this from? So there's another term, Umos HaOlam, the wise ones of the nation. And that means one who keeps the 7 mitzvahs, right? Because they're logical, make social sense, according to the Torah. They're called for the wise ones of the nation. So Ben Noach, a Noahide we'll call him, receives a limited portion of the world to come for his observance, most of his merit in this world. Right? Meaning that they're going to get their merits, part of their merit now, and we get something in the next world. Now, why aren't they going to get a huge portion in the next world? So the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, very simple. Because Jews, since we have an extra element of our soul, we're elevated, so to speak, and what makes us different than non-Jews, the mitzvahs we keep. Not just because, I like to eat gefilte fish and eat a bagel. That doesn't make me Jewish, right? I love the cardiac Jews. Jews in their heart. Well, that's beautiful. Means nothing. Means absolutely zero. You got to do something. If you don't do something, I'm no different than a non-Jew. Right? We can act like non-Jews also. Right? But the point is that we have a heck of a lot more mitzvahs. Shabbos, Sukkot, not speaking Lashon Hara, blessings. There are a million things that we have that non-Jews don't have. Now, there might be 65 mitzvahs non-Jews have, 70 mitzvahs. I would go on to say there are a lot of things that are moral imperatives that non-Jews should keep. Doesn't mean they're liable if they don't. But they're good things to do anyway. Now, there's also what we call Mechaside, Umos HaOlam, the pious who receive a share in the world to come. Because the Talmud tells us, Sanhedrin 105a, that Umos HaOlam, the Gentile nations, have a share in the world to come if they are Chasidim, if they're pious. So a non-Jew keeps the 7 mitzvahs, the 7 commandments. It's called Mechaside Umos HaOlam. Here's the pious non-Jews, and they get a portion of the world to come. Right? But there's a caveat. There's a catch over here. What's the catch? The catch is only if you accept and observe the mitzvahs from the viewpoint, as the Rambam says, that they were transmitted, reaffirmed to the world via Moshe Rabbeinu and Mount Sinai. They have to believe they're keeping the Noahide laws because Moshe passed it down to us. If a person keeps the 7 mitzvahs only account of the original covenant with Adam and Noah, you also get reward. Right? You also get some reward. Right? Because of that original covenant. But the rewards will be of lesser form. It's not going to be the same because you're not doing it for the right reason. The right reason is because God said so. And God passed it down to Moshe. They won't be considered of the pious non-Jews. Now, there's a question that always comes up. I get this all the time. And that is, how do you become a Ben Noach? What do I have to do to be a Noah? Right? Come out of Christianity, paganism, whatever it is. What do I do to become a Noahide? So you have to accept the 7 mitzvahs upon themselves. Again, they are divinely ordained, commanded by God through Moses, who reaffirmed the covenant with Adam and then with Noah. And once a person does that, they affirm it, they become Mechaside Umos HaOlam. A pious Gentile. Now, any personal acceptance over here is enough. It makes logical sense, maybe, to make a form of a verbal oath, enumerating the 7 mitzvahs, stating your motivation accepting it. Again, any text is going to be good enough. One example will say here, I accept upon myself the 7 commandments, children of Noah, including the general specific prohibition of idolatry, murder, theft, sexual immorality, blasphemy, eating flesh going from a live animal. I know that's a big one for most people. A general specific commandment to establish a system of justice, blah, blah, blah. Now, a person can do that. Do you have an obligation, as people ask? Do you have an obligation to accept them before any Jewish law court, i.e. a basis? Right? Is there an obligation to go in front of 3 rabbinic court judges and accept these laws? Right? Now, what's the answer? Any personal or private acceptance of the 7 mitzvahs is enough. I don't have to go, and non-Jew doesn't have to go in front of a basis. They don't have to go in front of a Jewish court. Some may feel the need. They want to do it. They want to make it official. Some say anywhere they have to. Doesn't even say it helps. Right? Doesn't really do anything. A person can even have a certificate. I accepted upon myself the 7 laws, and they have it stamped by 3 rabbis. Okay? I could also use that for a tissue. It doesn't have any relevance. You make a declaration. You want to write it down, okay? You want to make a verbal declaration, you should. It's a good thing to do. But I don't have to do it in front of 3 rabbis. I don't have to do it in front of a rabbinical court. There are people who say that you should, and well, there's no source. There's absolutely no source. But again, if you make a verbal, if a person makes a verbal commitment You can do it in front of yourself. I don't need to do it in front of anybody. I can do it in front of the mirror. To look at myself, make the commitment. I don't have to look in the mirror. I can say it. That's it. That, has as much power as it does in front of three rabbis. So now, another thing here, which is also pretty crucial, is the term which gets abused, seriously abused, and that is the term ger Toshav. The term ger Toshav means a non-Jew resides in the land of Israel. Now, normally in the Torah uses the word ger Toshav specifically. If it says ger, 99% of the time it's talking about a convert. Unless the context is it's talking about a ger Toshav. But the majority of the time it's talking about a ger Toshav. A convert. Now, the term ger Toshav, also a lot of confusion. Now, it's referred to many places in the Torah. Exodus chapter 12, verses 43 to 45. This is the decree of the Passover offering. A resident, i.e. Toshav, a resident, the high labor may not eat of it. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 6. The land yield the sabbatical year shall be yours to eat, yours and the resident. Who's the resident? Toshav. He's ger Toshav, who sojourns and lives among you. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 35, shall strengthen him, the convert or the resident. Who's the resident? Ger Toshav. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 40, like a laborer or a resident, i.e. a Toshav, he shall be with you until the Jubilee year he shall work for you. Can't be a convert. Cannot be talking about a convert. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 45, also among the children of the residents, Toshav, who dwell with you. Leviticus chapter 25, verse 47, if the means of a sojourner, right, means a ger, who resides among you, ger Toshav, can't be a convert. Numbers 35, verse 15, the children of Israel, the convert, obviously it says convert, then the other, ger over here is Toshav, right, the resident. So the term comes from the word ger, or gar, really, to mean to sojourn. It means an alien, a stranger, an immigrant. Like Abraham, when he's haggling with the children of Chet for a burial place. And he tells them, just a resident over here. Right? He uses the word. I just live here. I sojourn it. So here, Toshav, by definition, is a resident alien. A non-Jew resides in the land of Israel, among the Jewish people. But the Torah tells us, the idolaters shall not dwell in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me and worship their gods. Exodus chapter 23, verse 33. Right? So what does the ger Toshav have to do? So they are obligated to give up idolatrous beliefs in order to live in Israel. So if they don't give up idolatry, they're not a ger Toshav. They can't be a ger Toshav over here. Now, how is this done practically? How far must a non-Jew go to disavow an idolatry so he can reside in Israel? It comes on the Talmud, go to Zohar 64b, tells me the prospective ger Toshav must come before Basin, must come before a rabbinic court, accept upon himself to faithfully observe the 7 Noahide laws. That's a ger Toshav. It's not a Ben Noach, big difference. But what does the Talmud tell us? Right, Talmud tells us in Erchin 29a, later authorities say the same thing. No staffs ger Toshav to them. So I explained to one of these bozos. There's no ger Toshav to them. Yeah, I know. So what are you teaching them? What are you teaching them being a ger Toshav? They don't live in Israel. It only means they go against idolatry. They make a declaration in front of a rabbinical court, but they don't reside in Israel. It's a specific definition. How can you be a ger Toshav in America or any other country? You can't. It doesn't exist. In any way, you can't do it anyway today. There's no status. Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, so why are you teaching it? Why are you confusing people? You have better to do? It's a specific definition. Don't skew it. Don't make people more confused than they are. But now there are some rabbis that have instructed Noahides to accept the status of Ger Toshav even today. Okay, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Because there is no such thing today. You can say, well, I'll take it on. I'll take on that status. Right? Others have not sought to convert Ger Toshav status. Makes perfect sense. Why not? As we mentioned. But they required potential Noahides to nevertheless accept, to nevertheless accept their commandments before a beis din, before a rabbinical court. Now we're going to see both are totally unnecessary. If there's no status of Ger Toshav today, which we just mentioned, why would you go in front of a rabbinical court to do it? Why would you declare it? Even if you have to declare being a Noahide, I still don't need to know. First of all, it's not a Ger Toshav. They're two totally different things. If they're two totally different things, why do I have to come in front of a beis din in the first place? I don't. I can make the declaration in front of me, myself, and I. All three of us. Right? My civil complex. We'll all be together. I don't have to do it otherwise. Right? But that we're going to see. So, the bottom line is, according to Jewish law, there's no need or benefit. There's no benefit. Anyone tells you otherwise, they're lying. Right? We'll get you a nice certificate. We'll put the background of Jerusalem, the Western Wall. We'll give you a whole plaque. That's beautiful. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. There's no reason. There's no benefit. And we mentioned before, right, by the laws of kashrut. I mentioned this earlier in my class, one of my classes today, that, a non-Jew is not going to keep something that does not benefit them. Some people say, yeah, I want to clean animals, this, that, but it doesn't benefit them. It doesn't affect them the same way. One of the commentaries says in Leviticus chapter 11, why not? Because we see non-Jews eat creepy, crawly things and all kinds of things. They're not affected in a negative way. Jews will be, even though science hasn't proven it. Right? But there are certain things we can't eat. Right? So, I don't know about, eating bats and Wuhan and all that, so that might be a different issue. Right? But in general, if we see, according to this commentary, that non-Jews are not affected by what they eat, and we see they eat all kinds of things, they don't die from it, nothing bad happens to them. This commentary says, so why would a non-Jew do it? Why would they do it? Doesn't make sense. They'll say, no, it's going to give you benefits, it doesn't give you any benefit. There's no benefit over here. Just like we're saying here. Right? There's no need or benefit to accept the 7 mitzvahs before beis din, before a rabbinical court. It's going to, and again, it's not going to have any effects on the Ben Noach's religious status. It's not going to have any effect at all. Not on the status, not on the ability to fulfill mitzvahs. You might think, well, if I do that, I'll get more of a portion of the world to come. Let's go back to my plaque, to my piece of paper that I'm going to put on, I'm going to put in a nice frame, right? So I would say, that's great. You put it on the wall, looks beautiful. I'm going to come in, I'm going to take it out, I'm going to use the blue of my nose. No offense. Well, we won't get gross. Right? That's what I'm going to use it for. That's what it's worth. It's not going to help you in the world to come. It's not going to help you to fulfill the mitzvahs. It's not going to do anything. Right? So why would I do it? Why would a non-Jew it? Why would a non-Jew do it? Even if you live in a place where there's a beis din, there's a rabbinical court, it's not going to take you any time to do it. You call them up, say, can I come over and just do this? There's no benefit. Forget about flying there, other things. There's no benefit. Non-Jews are not going to do things, and keeping the Noahide laws that don't make sense. And that do not have any benefit to them. One of the things is kashrut. People say, oh, it's cleaner, it's this. Yeah, I can give an example. I could eat a nice T-bone steak, T-bone steak, take a few, a few potatoes, put in margarine because I want to keep it kosher, high in cholesterol and fat and all that. I can wolf it down, right? I can eat it like no tomorrow. Clean, right? Not going to be good for me, right? So clean doesn't necessarily mean good. People make that mistake also, right? But again, a non-Jew keeping the laws, keeping the Noahide laws, they're going to keep them what makes sense, A, and B, what are they going to do? They're going to do things that benefit them, that has an effect on them. If it doesn't have, you go back to Shabbos and Sukkot, if someone makes a Sukkot, let's say, a non-Jew makes a Sukkot, they sit in it. They sit on it on the holiday. There's no benefit. First of all, it doesn't apply to them, but even so, no benefit. So there is, so why would they do it? Because I can do it. I have the ability to do it, so I can't, why shouldn't I do it? Because it doesn't apply, like we mentioned earlier. So, there are specific, the point of today's class is there are specific definitions. By specific definitions, we don't want these definitions skewed. So someone's going to come along and say, hey, the word ger means something else. Really? It means something else. We just said it either means a convert, right? Even doesn't say ger tzedek. A lot of times it'll say ger in the Torah it means a convert. Other times it'll say ger Toshav, right? Someone's going to deny idolatry, going from a rabbinical court, live in the land. So that doesn't apply today. Fine. But there's no other term. Ben Noach is not in the Torah. Right? The son or daughter of Noah, that's in the Talmud. That's in Midrashic literature. Right? That's what the rabbis say. Okay. But these other things don't exist. Hocus pocus. Right? Abracadabra does not exist. So if it doesn't exist, then why are they shooting off their mouths? They like to. And they think, I got all these sources, and I got all this. They don't have anything. They don't have anything. These are very specific definitions. Because they're very specific definitions, they should never, ever be skewed. I just did a video on Tanakh Talk about what non-Jews are allowed to do, and how far they're allowed to go. So I didn't mention necessarily this thing about ger and ger Toshav, but I mentioned, there are things that are specifically for Jews. Right? You can't give me Webster's fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth definition and tell me, oh yeah, that's what it means. That only works for Scrabble. That's not going to work that's not going to work in Talmudic literature. Right? Because there are specific things over here. And you want to tell me, they'll claim no such thing as a Noahide. There's no such thing as a Ben Noah. We got Talmudic sources. You hold by the Talmud or you don't. We have Talmudic sources. You want to say I don't believe in the rabbis? Well, that makes you a heretic. Right? So we make you a heretic. There's no question. You get an issue with the oral law. Okay, so there's Messianic. So we'll call you Messianic. I don't believe in JC. But you're still a Messianic. Because you got problems with the oral law. You have to understand how the oral law works. So they cherry pick, they're not interested. Fine. Well, why am I making a whole thing of this? Because this has messed up a lot of people. Made my job, Ray's job, a heck of a lot harder. Someone went to a class, I just mentioned the story. I said, okay, tell me what happens afterwards. They go to this class, they come out and say, Rabbi, you're never going to believe what happened. I said, what happened? They said, I came out more confused than I went in. Thank you very much. You know what that means? That means that someone's giving over information and people come out more confused than when they started. That means the person, by definition, giving over the information don't know diddly about what they're talking about. And they don't understand the material. And I say all the time, if you don't understand the material, don't give classes. Don't make podcasts. I mentioned this earlier. I went on my whole tirade about it because I blew someone out of the water, months ago. One of my Q&As, because the person makes a claim. He says, the Code of Jewish Law. The Code of Jewish Law says married women and single women have to cover their hair. That's what the Code of Jewish Law says. True. That's what the Code of Jewish Law says. Now, there's only one problem. First of all, the person reading it, a non-Jew, butchered every Hebrew word. That's one problem. But the second problem is he doesn't understand the context. Because you're right, that's what the Code of Jewish Law says. But see, I've lived in Jewish communities in different places, Orthodox, other Orthodox communities, modern Orthodox communities. I never ever saw a single woman cover her hair. Never. Maybe in Yemen, single women might have carried their hair so they don't get raped, by the Muslims. Okay, that I can hear. But in any other Jewish community, so this idiot gets up, he's making this video, talking in Jewish law, but he doesn't understand. If he would have lived in a Jewish community, he would have said, you know what this means? It can't mean this. We don't hold like that in that case. So I went ballistic. Why did I go ballistic? Because I don't like sheker. I don't like lies. And I don't like misrepresentation. And this person, okay, I understand why I wanted to make the video. But for goodness sakes, you have limited knowledge. Go sit and learn. You want to convert, fine. Learn what you need to do. I can also read the Code of Jewish Law, but you can't read the commentaries because the commentaries aren't translated. They're not translated. So how would you know what they say? You wouldn't. And if you don't know what they would say, then the context, what you're saying, is totally out of whack. Even though that's what the Code of Jewish Law says, I agree. But you have to understand the context. If you don't understand the context, then why are you giving a class in Jewish law? Why are we even talking about it? If you tell me the context or whatever, okay, that's one thing. But if you would have known practically that in every single Jewish community in the world, in the Orthodox community, you will never, let's repeat, you will never ever see single women cover their hair. You won't see it. And if you do, it's abnormal. Totally abnormal. There are burqa women. Women that look like they're wearing a burqa, right? You can only see their eyes. They have the shawl. They call them the shawl women. And the girls wear it also. They're wackos. Nobody holds with them. Nobody. The other Orthodox community holds with them. Right? They're a pariah. They're actually, they're doing things more for modesty, but they're getting more people to look at them because they're dressed weird. Right? So in that case, you tell me, okay, so you're going to see a 6-7-year-old girl or older, wear this shawl and maybe wear this thing around her head. That's not the norm. That's not the norm at all. Right? So I always say, when I was in camp many years ago, someone said something stupid, you didn't embarrass them. You would say, learn the rules, play the game, practice. Right? So you got to be careful who you listen to. Someone makes a video and says, single women and married women have to cover their hair. If they're Jewish. Well, red flag. Red flag. What's the red flag? Single women. I don't see any single women covering their hair. Not my family, not my friend's family, nobody. I don't see it. So then the question is, what does the Shulchan Aruch mean? What does the Code of Jewish Law mean? Come on, the commentaries explain. And they explain what it means. But you can't read it at face value and not know the context. That makes you look silly. So I always say a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. You can know a little bit about a lot of different things, but know everything about nothing. So you got to be careful where the information is coming from. And these people have done tremendous damage. Tremendous damage. These are strict definitions. These are the definitions. Don't let anyone tell you Bnei, Noach, they don't exist. It's a made-up thing. It's not. Straight from the Talmud. It exists in a number of places. The question of Hachmei Umos HaOlam, the wise ones of the nations, or Mechasidei Umos HaOlam, they have the real thing. They may not have the same portion in the world to come as Jews, but okay. They're still going to have a portion of the world to come. That's not a made-up thing. That's brought up in the Drushim, in other sources as well. So, bottom line, as most people probably aware, just wanted to make the point clear, and that is that, these things have sources. We're going to source everything over here. We're going to show where the sources are. It's not a made-up thing. Right? People have an issue with oral law, that's a different issue. But you want to tell me, some of these idiots say, no such thing as Bnei, made-up thing. Really? I got 7, 8 sources in the Talmud tell me it's not made up. No, don't give me excuses. Does it say in the Talmud? Yes or no? Right? I don't want but. I don't want Webster's 8th definition. Yes or no? Does it say son of Noach, Bnei Noach, whatever? Does it say in the Talmud? Yes or no? It does. Pretty clear. It says, no, you got No, I don't know. I don't need to know anything. I know it exists. I know it's there. Right? When you start skewing definitions, you make it up as you go along because you have a drop of knowledge. That is scary. That 100% is scary. Yeah. So I guess that's it for me. Anyone have any questions? Take any questions about anything brought up today. Yeah, Ray asked about Ger Toshav, that's only in Israel. You know, if someone says, yeah, I could be a Ger Toshav in Phoenix, good luck. Go in front of a rabbinical court. I want anyone to do this. And say, I want to be a Ger Toshav. See what the rabbinical court says. Not a good idea. Doesn't do anything, doesn't exist. No, but I know, but the life teaching. You know, it's like the blind leading the blind. You know, someone asks, no hides and head coverings. Why should they cover their hair? The Talmud says that a woman's hair is licentious. Right? A non-Jew does not have to cover their hair. Noahide does not have to cover their hair. That's straddling the boundary. Right? That is one of the boundaries. We're going to speak about it. Right? It's not just about holidays here. You know, a non-Jewish woman should dress modestly. True. You know, she shouldn't dress provocative. You know, that I would agree. But a head covering would be something for a married Jewish woman. Doesn't apply to a non-Jew. You know, but isn't hair licentious? Yeah, it is. But a Jewish man should not be looking at a non-Jewish woman anyway. So it's bad. So wouldn't it be better for a non-Jewish woman to cover her hair? Doesn't have no obligation. Doesn't apply. Right? It wouldn't apply. What about a non-Jew would say a guy wants to wear a yarmulke, wants to wear a kippah, tzitzis? Doesn't apply. Totally doesn't apply. We want to make clear. We want to make clear these boundaries do not get straddled. A non-Jew, again, there's plenty for what a non-Jew to do. You know, the problem is it looks like they can't do very much. That's, you know, I could keep you busy for the next 250 years. You know, plenty what to learn. Plenty what is permissible. Problem is everyone goes to things that are forbidden. Talmud, forbidden. Kabbalah, forbidden. Right? There are many things that are forbidden, I guess. Right? But there are plenty of things I can learn also. Jewish philosophy, you know, go back. Anyone wants to be a Nagid, go back in the class of Derech Hashem. Beautiful class. You know, understand, the purpose of non-Jews. Understand, how reincarnation works. You know, the evil inclination. These are deep things. A lot of it's Kabbalistic. You know, gave, 30 classes, 60 hours. It was a lot of fun. Very draining, but it was, it was unbelievable to get that type of information. So, that's a good book to go through. But it's deep. It's not an easy thing to go through. But it's worthwhile because that's a book changed my life 20 years ago, more. Right? When I first went through it, the evil inclination, reincarnation, how all these things work, it made a lot of sense. Answered up a lot of questions. Good for non-Jews also. Ray points out Ger Toshav is only in Israel. Yeah. Doesn't apply in America. The whole thing today doesn't apply anyway, but don't let those people tell you, no, it does. No, it doesn't. A friend of mine was on a plane once. Tell you a funny story. A friend of mine was on a plane, and this woman sitting next to him, was saying, talking to him, and says, I keep the sabbatical year. I don't do my garden and this and that in the sabbatical year. He's like, oh, very nice. Like, where do you live? Like, oh, I live in Oklahoma. I live in, wherever this woman lives. And he goes, well, that's beautiful. There's only one problem. So she goes, what's that? He says, sabbatical year only is in Israel. So if you have land in Israel, it doesn't apply anywhere else. The Torah makes that clear. She didn't know. She had no idea. But it only applies in Israel. Right? Ger Toshav only applies in Israel. Person wants to take on the oath, good luck. Right? No, there's no benefit here. Right? And the irony is, which I would say is, why would you teach something that's not beneficial? Not only that's wrong. It's wrong because I can give a podcast. Because I can read a little bit of Hebrew. Because I can live. It's all misleading. It's all very, very misleading. We want to make clear over here. We're going to source it. We're going to explain it. We're going to make it clear. Hopefully as clear as possible. We've shown there are specific definitions. That's it. These are the definitions. Someone tells you there are other definitions, they're lying. There are no other definitions. Right? But, it's hard enough to know what to do and accept it and all that, so we want to do it right. That's why we don't want anyone straddling both worlds. We don't want to Judaize, we spoke last week, these laws. Because essentially a non-Jew's going to come, and everything that they're doing depends on us. Well, it shouldn't depend on us. There are holidays, not yours. It's our Shabbos, not yours. Right? So, how can something that's supposed to be universal be dependent on us? Dependent on our law. Right? That's one question. Right? But we're going to see specifically by the holidays and what they represent. We're going to go step by step. Yeah, any other questions? Or general questions? Yeah, go ahead. You can unmute yourself if you want. We'll see how fast you can type. The local Chabad, okay. Invite the whole city out for Hanukkah. Yeah, Hanukkah applies to Jews, but there also is a universal idea. Right? What's the universal idea of Hanukkah? Don't be a Greek. Don't give in to the Western world. Don't worship the body. Don't watch football. Right? Don't worship the body. Don't worship education. Don't be like everybody else. That's useful. That 100% is universal. Right? So that, does that mean non-Jews should light candles? No. Were they saved from the Greeks? No. But what do the Greeks represent? We're living in the Greek world. If we're living in the Greek world, then we have to know how to live within it according to the Torah. According to what God wants from us as a Jew or a non. So even if they invite the whole city, okay. They're not the one, I'm hoping non-Jews aren't lighting the candles. Or making the blessing. I have that in my own family. Bad enough. You see everybody assimilated. So many people intermarrying. You got non-Jews lighting the candles, making the blessing. God's irony is exactly the opposite of what Hanukkah is. Totally opposite. I've had a family Hanukkah party in my family, I don't know, more than 80 years. People brag about it, family Hanukkah party. Most of the people there aren't Jewish. It's an oxymoron. Where I came from is a good question, but that's a total oxymoron. Because the whole thing is going against the Greeks and not being like them and not intermarrying and all that. Then why are you lighting Hanukkah candles in the first place? So you think, well, if the Jew wants to light it, okay, so let him light it. Let them light the Hanukkah candles. Don't let non-Jews do it. But again, you're going to get everyone together, all these non-Jews, and you light the Hanukkah candles. Makes no sense. Because you're saying the Greeks are right. We're living the Greek life, so what is the Hanukkah then? It's all about donuts and latkes, not necessarily in that order. That's what it is. They don't have a clue what it really means. Don't really have no clue. Thing is, hey, isn't it a good thing that they're doing it? No. Let them the Jews want to light the candles, fine. But you want to get together. I get it. You want to get together with the whole family. A lot of people in the family. Keep this tradition going. Nobody goes to synagogue pretty much on Rosh Hashanah. Not on Yom Kippur, at least not my family. A lot of people don't go. No, this they do. It's an easy thing. You light candles, no big deal. But it doesn't mean anything. So if it doesn't mean anything, why do it? That's what I would say. But why have non-Jews do it? It's the opposite of what the holiday means. But, oh, you're too fanatic. You're too big of a fanatic. You're right, I'm a fanatic. But it doesn't make sense. Think about what it means, what it represents. Then why would you do it? I just want to, this is my Judaism. And you can't say otherwise. I mean, I can, you're just not going to listen. But it's just ironic. I remember, a family would get together on Rosh Hashanah. People would come in or whatever. A number of times, they did Rosh Hashanah on Sunday. Why on the Sunday? Because most people work. Right? I made a comment. I said, well, the holiday's not today. The holiday's not on Sunday. Yeah, but, most people work. So it's just like family getting together. But it doesn't mean anything. It's all about judgment. It's all about doom and gloom. It's all about being in synagogue all day. You celebrated not really celebrating. I can't even say it's commemoration. It's nothing. So they have a meal, big deal. It's not Rosh Hashanah. It's not what it means. It's totally not what it means. It's totally ironic. They go, yeah, but this is what we do. Okay. Again, where I came from, big miracle. Absolute miracle. Thank God I'm not that well. It's crazy. But people don't think, people don't care. Right? That's really, that's really the bottom line. But, it's ironic. It's ironic, light the candles and what, if you thought about what it represents, aren't you embarrassed? Shouldn't you be embarrassed? Most of the families are Jewish. What are you doing a family Hanukkah party? 80 years, 90 years, 100 years. Whatever it is, let it go on. That doesn't mean very much. Yeah. Any other questions? Or general questions? Take any questions. All right, I guess there's no questions, and I got another class to give, so I will not log out here. I'll just end myself. Anyone has any questions? Again, you can email me. I'll put my email address up here. Anyone can email me, and we'll continue with this next week. So I guess wishing everyone a good middle of the day, end of the day, or somewhat, depending where you are. And everyone have a great week.